Welcome to the Workplace Podcast in association with Dynamic Partners. We've got an incredible guest today, and we're really excited for the insights and ideas they'll be sharing. There are so many practical learnings from this conversation that will make a difference to you, your team, or your organization. Whether you're navigating leadership challenges, building high-performing teams, or driving organizational change, today's episode has something valuable for you. If your organisation is interested in exploring this topic further or would benefit from a workshop, feel free to get in touch via our website, dynamicpartners.ie. Now, let's start the conversation. Today's guest is Oscar de Bos. Oscar is the co-founder and CEO of Focus Academy, a training company that helps professionals master the science of productivity and focus. He is the co-author of the international bestseller Focus On Off and Focus Bites, and has recently re-released his latest book, Focus Routine. Focus Academy has established itself as a dedicated training partner, instructing thousands of participants annually through their immersive in-company courses. To support these programs, the company operates as a creative studio, bridging the gap between productivity, science, and design. Oscar and his team develop tools ranging from educational videos to popular apps such as Focus Mode and ZenPen.
Welcome to the Workplace Podcast. On the podcast today is Oscar de Bos, and we're going to discuss his book, Focus, Fuel Your Attention and to Get More Done. Oscar, welcome to the Workplace Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited.
So, Oscar, I was excited as well because I read an article on your book there, and I actually said, oh, that's a brilliant article. And then I realized it was your name and your book that was the focus of that article in The Guardian. And I was like, I have that. I can't wait to read it. And this is such a great book for people. I'm going to tell our listeners here why I like this book so much. So, for me, I always struggled with this topic when I was younger. And what I like about this is all the tips and insights that you bring from a neuroscience perspective, like those explanations of neurochemicals, the focus leaks. We're going to discuss this, like that need for stimulation and how to handle mind wandering. I love that term. And handling distractions, especially that magpie behavior, that shiny thing that we keep chasing. And even if you're a manager, how might you be causing issues there? So it's great also from our previous podcast guest, you've brought in her research, Dr. Gloria Mark. And especially then if you're a visual learner, I love the diagrams to explain the insights and the tables then explain differences between targeted and open attention. And what's really, really good as well is because you introduce us to so many different terms, you have the glossary at the end, which is brilliant. So it really is such a practical book for anybody wishing to fuel their attention to get more done. Well done, Oscar and Mark.
What a introduction. Thank you so much for the kind words.
So just before the podcast beginning, I was talking about obviously the Guardian article and why I thought this book was so practical there. And really your emphasis is on focus management, not time management. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, it's been an old strategy to manage our time. I think it's been popular since the ending of the Second World War. Time management became a big thing, and we try to control time and every second. And what happens is that we kind of make a illusionary picture of the future. So we create this perfect idea of what we do every second and every minute, but that's not how our brain is kind of built. So it's very difficult to predict the future, to know when you can do a task, how long a task is going to work. And what we do have to rely on is the amount of like focus fuel that you have, the amount of attention that you can spend on a task is way more valuable. And you can, I think it's a better strategy to put that first. Try to get yourself into a place where you can focus really well, and then you will be very productive as a result, instead of the opposite way of trying to forcing yourself to be very productive because your time management idea has said so. So I'm going to be very productive tomorrow from 3 to 4. But well, life happens, and then you're not that productive between 3 and 4, and that's, I think, the kind of change in strategy.
So just on that, you were saying how our brains are built then. So are we designed to be focused, easy distracted? Is nature or nurture? Does technology have a play? What's the evolutionary perspective of this?
Well, we are built to be distracted. I mean, that's how we survive. And any animal actually is built to be distracted because, well, you can imagine if you're like in a forest and there's a tiger like around the corner. It's good to be distracted by any crisping noise that kind of tells like, oh no, that's a tiger, I better run away. Right? It's good to be distracted. And also now if the alarm goes off, it's very safe that your brain will say, okay, let's stop working on this Google document and let's run out the building because it might be on fire. So yes, we are built to be distracted. And of course, what you mentioned already with technology and how we communicate with each other, it's going faster and faster. So the amount of times that we are distracted, that we switch between our attention, is becoming more frequent. And now we're kind of losing the battle on the longer stretches of a sustained attention, of focus. And I think that is the price that we're paying now.
So just on that, if we're in the attention economy, as they call it, and focus, then like how does focus work then? Because if it's not a natural thing to do, how does it work?
Well, your brain is kind of deciding every second what's the most important thing to focus on. So that's the formula as it is,
Yeah.
right? So what's the most important thing right now, and brain will focus on that automatically. The big problem is that there's a lot of competing things, and your brain will think something else is more important right now, and that's yeah. Well, what the battle is.
And the point you make in the book is like we're like big walking antennas. Like you mentioned, like the thalamus there that it's filtering information all the way across. All the way with all the information coming through, and there's so much. I think you were saying like 11 million bits.
11 billion bits, yeah,
Yeah, of
every second.
information all the way coming through, and then suddenly you were saying like in the book it was that cocktail effect. So from a neuroscience perspective, how does that work then, the focus aspect?
Well, it's kind of the bigger version of what I said
Mm,
before. Like it's trying to decide what's the most important thing. So if you're imagining yourself, you are in a cocktail party and you're
yeah,
talking in this little group
yeah,
most of the times, and there are other little groups around you. Your brain
yeah,
can kind of switch between listening to all the noises around you, like the whole room. We have a very
yeah,
good Dutch word for it. It's called geroezemoes. So now it's a good word, right?
yeah.
But it's a murmur sound. So the murmur around you, but you can focus kind of on one specific story somebody in front of you is telling you. So that's where the 11 million bits that enter your brain, all the sounds around you are being filtered to only 40 to 50 bits per second, and that's the story you're listening actively from the person in front of you. So that's focus. And what is distraction? If somebody next to you in another group mentions your name, and then you are distracted, right? And this is a subconscious thing. Your brain was filtering everything around you, all the 11 million bits, all the stories around you, the full conversation happening next to you. But then it decided, oh, wait, this is your name. This is Oscar. This is more important than the semi boring story in front of you. Let's switch your attention to the story next to you, and let's focus on that part, because somebody might be talking about you and might be nice. It might be something positive, might be also something negative. So let's switch our attention to the other conversation. So that's the brain trying to figure out what's the most important thing every second, and that's how focus works, and that's how distraction works in a nutshell.
So when I was growing up, people were saying just concentrate, and then you make the point in the book. There's four different concentration leaks that might happen, which our listeners would be very interested in hearing, because you're really, what you're doing is you're really expanding and giving us a real knowledge of how focus works in this book. So those four concentration leaks, what are they?
Well, we start with engagement. So this is a bit of the motivational thing. So you want to be concentrated, so you want to focus. If something is very boring or slow, like the conversation in the cocktail party, if it's very slow or boring, everything around you will be more exciting, right? Your brain will decide that the shoes of somebody next to you is like more engaging than the conversation at hand. So that's the first one. Then you have energy. So if you haven't had a good night's sleep or you didn't take any breaks that day, it's going to be more difficult to listen in on a story to focus. It does cost some energy, some fuel. And then you have your internal and your external distractors or stimuli. So your internal ones, these are your own thoughts. So these can be tasks or like a bad conversation that kind of lingers on the whole day, or something positive. You can be in love, right? It's very distracting. So I always say no space for love when it comes to focus. And so these are the internal ones. And then you have the external ones. These are what we generally blame what our focus is costing us. The colleagues around us, or the alarm goes off, right? So these are the external ones. So these, in a very short explanation, the 4 concentration leaks and the things that you can fix.
And I'm interested in then is knowing then to say, like over the last number of decades then, because the technology then, what we were just talking about then has our attention and an ability to focus then diminished, or, what's the research telling us then on that?
I'm hesitant to really say that our ability has
Okay.
gone lower. It's more difficult to do that research.
Yeah.
But of course, the great research of Gloria Mark have shown that in practice, when we are working, we are switching our attention more often. And she did it a couple of times, and a couple of colleagues of her as well, the same study now over a course of 20 years. And she has shown that where we used to switch every 150 seconds, it's now down to 44. So there's good research that in practice we switch more, we are less focused. But to really say that we are unable to do it, like the skill, it's more difficult to say.
And then what I liked about your research, then, or sorry, your book, should I say? And this is something I laughed about. It's the Yerkes
Yerkes and
dots
Dassel,
law.
yeah.
Yeah. You were saying, oh, I came up with it, or I don't know which author came up with that, but could you just explain that? Because a lot of people are familiar with this, but sometimes it's a bit like we need a certain amount of stimulus, but not too much, isn't it?
Yeah. So there's this Goldilocks area where we are, and it's with the motivation engagement. So you need some kind of um, excitement or speed to be focused on something. And if it goes too fast, then it gets overstimulated, where you can lose your focus because it's going too fast. And if it's really too slow, if it's something very boring or slow, like I said, this is a lack of engagement, and then everything around you will be more exciting. And this is a very, very old uh, psychology term that has shown this already.
And that's based on that neuroadrenaline, that
Yeah.
neurochemical transmitter there. And so we need a certain amount of that to really be
Yeah.
focused then. And what I like about it then is there's some people then that actually need a certain amount of stimulation if they're bored in their work. So if you're bored in
Yeah.
your work, they're like, how might I be more focused then? What are the things I might be able to do?
Well, you can. There are different ways to kind of increase the engagement. So I like to start by mentioning that if it's something fun that you're doing, like you really love to do it, well, then you get it. It's a given, right? You get engagement for free. But that's normally not when people ask me the tips. They want the tips when something is kind of boring. They want to artificially increase the engagement. So there's where all the tips and tricks come in, like setting a deadline, or encouragement by your colleagues. You can give a high five to somebody, or like a gym teacher, right? So you can increase the engagement in different ways. by kind of artificially motivating people around you or yourself. That will increase the engagement. And there's a lot of tips and tricks.
Yeah, because sometimes what I do is I actually write intentionally to make sure I'm taking notes, and I'll take pictures during one note if I'm at a lecture or workshop or something like that. And it's really about making sure I'm not going to, and I love this term that you have actually, mind wandering. There. Just on that, what is mind wandering then?
Well, mind wandering is something that happens automatically.
Yeah.
It's what they call the default mode network starts to kick in,
Yeah.
and that's the default mode of the brain, which is very fun research to read because they used to call it does mostly nothing. They thought the brain was inactive when it was resting, and then later on they figured out that the brain was actually pretty active when it's in a resting state. So you receive a lot of information during the day, and when you walk around and you do nothing for your feeling, your default mode network starts to kick in, and your brain will start to kind of make sense of all the information that it had, and it starts to clean up a little bit, and that will feel for you as mind wandering because your mind will also tell you things like you start to remember things, or it's very difficult to really think about nothing, but like kind of ideas pop up, and that's what we call then mind wandering. And that's your brain trying to make sense of all the information and putting it in the right place. And it's great for your memory and creativity because your brain has time to do its thinking instead of you bombarding it with new information and using it in like a forceful way.
So this is something I'm often in coaching sessions with people, is how do you create that space to think strategically? Um, and sometimes I feel what's happening now is there's so much a cognitive overload going on for people. It's nearly like their brains are at full capacity, or full then, and then it doesn't, you don't have that capacity then to really think. Like, is there a neuroscience behind this, or what's going on for especially people who have so much going on that it nearly feels like the bucket is full, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's difficult to keep everything inside your brain, right? So
Yeah.
and that's where we get a lot of also inspiration by David Allen, who really did great work on this. And his famous quote is that your brain is for having ideas, not for holding them. And that's a philosophy that we also kept in our book. And we met him here. He moved to Amsterdam, so that was a big inspiration for us. And um, he also, like, it's a nice little anecdote that David told us, that he started as a consultant before he wrote the books. And what he actually did as a kind of a joke that he told is that it was an easy job because I just put a big manager or director in front of me with a piece of paper and a pen, and I just said to him for 30 minutes, just write everything what's inside your brain and put it in this list. And then that person would have the best ideas. And he said, "Okay, I'll send you this, send you the bill." I've never forget that idea, but it's a great way to do consulting because people just need the space to kind of offload everything what's in their mind and to make sense of it all. And instead of just holding it here, to offload it to an external place, just a piece of paper and a pen. That
And
was the
that's
trick.
and is that the, when you were talking in the book, then David Allen, is it that the VLPFC? Is it the ventral lateral
From
prefrontal cortex?
yeah,
Yeah. So what
yeah.
is that where you're kind of emptying your mind out to make room for another, or what is?
Yeah, it's your thinking brain. So your
Yeah.
prefrontal cortex. Yeah, it's where your thinking happens, and then you need more space to be able to use it. If you're just constantly using that area of the brain, you kind of have to offload it, and that's the general
Look,
idea anyway.
If this conversation has you thinking about getting better at conflict in your team, now is a good time to act on it. Resolution intelligence helps leaders bend the arc of conflict toward healthy resolution, navigating challenges with confidence and saving time, money, and relationships. Visit resolution-intelligence.com to get your personal resolution intelligence report and take the first step.
Yeah, because I like that idea. Then you bring into the book is there's like a mind sweep or a
Yeah,
top room. Is it that you called it, where you're just clearing your brain and you're just like writing everything
exactly.
down there? And this is something I used to do before bedtime. So I used to, when I started up my company 15 years ago, I was just, my brain was full of thoughts there. And I'd wake up in the middle of my head be full of thoughts. And my wife, who was my fiance at the time, I'd be scribbling on the stairs there. I didn't want to wake her, and I'd be writing all my ideas down. And then I could actually go back to sleep.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's the whole idea. What a great example. That's it. Because you cannot hold it all. You have to get it out there. Otherwise, you can't sleep. Yeah, it's very difficult to think, or you get restless, and um, otherwise the brain will keep on going.
And that's where I go back to David Allen's work. I think
Yeah,
he is getting things done. He's like five
yeah,
steps there. Do you want
yeah.
to talk us through those 5 steps? I
Uh,
can give you a hand if you need.
yeah.
Yeah. So the first one there is capture. Then what? So when we're capturing, then is it we're capturing all the information that we need, or what is that capture piece?
Well, yeah, that's what every life throws at you. So these can be your emails, your notes, your own thoughts, the things that you wrote on a piece of paper, and that's the idea um, to gather all the information and put it into one bucket, and then to go it by one. Of course, David Allen, still in his book, he did it with files, like literal file cabinets. And he had a
Yeah.
great system of this. I've never tried it because I've been too young. I've did not done it all digitally, but
Yeah.
it was so cool to see that he had these the file cabinets. Really, everything that was written on a piece of paper and everything was in a physical bucket, and it's yeah, awesome. But yeah, that's your inbox, your one inbox, everything in one place, so you know what's in and what's not. Yeah.
And then the second thing is we have clarify then. So clarify then for David Allen, what did that meant for getting things done?
Well, that he explains is that we are very lazy in. Well, that's how I remembered it when I did the courses. Is that we're very lazy in writing down stuff. So we will say birthday mom on a paper instead of clarifying what the task is. So every time you look at the task, you have to rethink of what to do, and then it becomes very vague and very stressful because then you have a big task list of vague things, and you have no idea how much work it's going to be, and that's very stressful and also not very productive. So that step two is to really clarify, like, okay, call the flower shop to buy flowers for my mom. And if you written that, it's very easy to follow that step. So every time you have a moment, you can just pick up the phone and call the flower shop. It's not that hard. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, that saves you a lot of time. That's a very important step.
Yeah, and that's the outcome focus there. So I might give you an example of how I've used this framework here, because remember, I often tell the story when I'm helping people in workshops, and it was my wife's birthday coming up, okay? Um, and we were due our second child just a couple of weeks before her birthday. So I wanted to mark her 40th, but I knew around that time it's incredibly busy at work, as well as her birthday coming up, as well as dealing with a toddler. And then we didn't know when the pregnancy was going to arrive. And thankfully so, because my gorgeous son arrived 3 weeks early. And I actually started clarifying in for me what needs to happen in the next couple of months. And for me to organize myself, I was able to compartmentalize business, family, wanted to make sure I was, focusing on my wife, and I didn't want that milestone to be missed. And I really wanted to, do a little party or whatever, but I also wanted to get her something nice as well to mark the occasion. And I actually started planning for that in August for me. So my focus was in ahead, and it was something where I was using this. Then I was organizing then, and then that's where that's step three, and then the reflect comes in then to say, actually, what else do I need to do, and then engage again in the actual things that need to happen there. So because I was going to get jewelry for my wife, I rang up a guy I used to go to school with, Richard Hartman in Galway. Hartman's Jewelers, big call out to you. And he held on to the jewellery there and he posted it up to me. I had it all sorted and all that, and I'd paid for, and it got sent to my office then there when I was going to be there. So it was just for me a way then to make sure I was organized and focused on what needed to be focused, and I was calm. But another part of that was the mind sweep as well, as I didn't have to worry about that then, and I could focus then and be more present with my family.
Oh yeah, it's a
For
perfect
which,
example. Yeah, it is the
yeah,
perfect example of the getting things done method. It's time proved. It's one of the best systems to have a clear mind and to, well, for us in our book, to clear up your internal stimuli.
yeah.
And everybody needs a system. There are more systems. There are other authors and famous books who also zoom in on the organization. But I'm just I'm a big fan of David Allen's work, and I've just seen it work so many times, and also for myself. It's a great system.
What people don't realize, people think I'm hyper focused all the time, and if people met me in real life, they'll probably know it's just I've developed all these little systems and habits over time there. And I often joke with people, if you saw me on holidays when my systems aren't there, I'm very different. And this is where, even at the start of this podcast, I have a checklist there. So in the book, you describe this as your external hard drive, where we kind of rely on my notes on OneNote, or how I manage my organize my files or my system or my notes here. And that's where we have that external hard drive, and isn't it? It's something that I don't need to worry about that. That's somewhere else, isn't it? And it reduces that fatigue on our brain.
Exactly, and I must say a lot of smart people struggle with this because they grow up with a great memory, so they're kind of used to doing everything by head, right? So memorizing everything that you have to do, like when you're young at school, that you know which uh, things you have to do, and somebody who struggles with that will sooner, quicker go up to a external hard drive and to have this system built in. Whereas people who have great memory, they find it more difficult to switch to a system. But life goes very fast, and before you know it, you're in a big company with a million projects and children, and it's too many things to memorize, and then yeah, it's very difficult to keep holding to that system of memorization and doing everything from the top of your mind. So I think it's very important to make that switch to a system, which is scary because you're gonna forget things because you didn't write it down in your system good enough. So I've been there when I just started this, and before you know it, you improve your system, and then you start to have more.
Yeah. And this is something I often say to people, and I'm glad you have it in the book. I know I don't have the neuroscience part of it, but I'm glad you backed this up by the neuroscience. So I might be mispronouncing this, which I often do in the podcast. It's the basal ganglia cells. Yeah,
Mhm.
and this is where you remove that decision fatigue there, that you're actually creating that cognitive capacity there. And so you give the example like of Mark Zuckerberg, or where it was just like gray t-shirt, jeans
Mhm.
every day, or you see like different people have. I think it was George Bush used to have coloring systems that he knew, each color meant for each brief that he had. So if it was environment, it was green, we'll say. If it was Department of Defense, it would have been a different color there. So isn't that all the way that we organize ourselves then actually creates that cognitive capacity?
Yeah, there's this thing called decision fatigue, which they've
Mm.
proved in a lot of fun ways that it's true. So every decision that you make, it will cost your brain, and this buildup of glutamate will go in your brain during the day. And glutamate is a neurotransmitter. It's a very common one. But if it's used, it kind of lingers on. A part of it lingers on in your brain. And then it will become a bit toxic. And it's a signal to your brain to stop using it. So that's why in the end of the day, you're so tired. And it's very difficult to think of a Netflix series that you want to watch because you just don't want to think. Your brain is fried, as they say. So that's why it's such a smart idea to, especially for these leaders who have a lot of things to think about, to keep the decision fatigue as low as possible, and don't think about anything else but the important stuff, because it saves your glutamate and your brain capacity for the only for the important stuff. I like the joke is that nowadays we kind of all live in this world with our phones, and the amount of information and decisions that we have to make, as if we are a president of the United States. That because we're like bombarded with decisions, so we kind of experience the same decision fatigue as Bush at the time, and now we have to kind of figure out how to deal with that.
So just on that, right, Oscar, you say people just, they're taking out their phones all the time there, and this is something we were talking about, the stimulus then is this boredom is sometimes seen as a bad thing. But in the book, then you're saying, well, actually, it's good for the default mode network or do most of
Yeah,
nothing. Um,
yeah.
sorry for that joke there. Yeah, so just on that, the boredom, like why should we, embrace boredom a little bit more?
Yeah, it's a funny play of words because boredom by itself is, of course, a very negative word. So if you're doing nothing and you're liking it, you would not call it boredom. So that's the word should not exist. Let's put it like that. So if you're doing nothing, like we mentioned before, your default mode work starts to kick in, and it's finally the time where your brain can kind of make sense of all the information that you received before. But we call it boredom because we're so used to like fun information all the time, that we're very uneasy when we don't receive stimuli, right? So we get a bit
Yeah.
stressed about it, and that's when that's why we call it boredom. We want more excitement. I'm bored. I want to have new stuff, new things, and I think that's why we should embrace it more because it's very healthy, but it's also very productive because when you're doing nothing, your default mode work starts to kick in, and you'll be more creative. You have better ideas later on. Your brain has time to make sense of it all. You'll be twice as productive when you start to work again. So even if you're like a productive junkie, still that it's a better strategy.
And then, what I really like then is the aspect of sleep and how you went into that. Now, we just recorded a podcast with Camilla Kring, and she was talking about different chronotypes
Mm.
that people have. And you were talking about that energy levels there, but even the power nap. No, I'm a massive fan of the power nap.
Good.
What are the benefits of a power nap? Because I used to do this every day in secondary school. So that's our kind of like a middle school, um, and I was a big fan of this, and I was very focused in the afternoon going into school after my lunchtime break.
Yeah, it's a perfect strategy. I think it has a bad rep. We should celebrate it more. Well, I'm half Spanish, so we are a fan of the siesta, which is almost the same thing, I think. Which is the idea that you just take a nap after lunch, and the big benefit. And I had this talk with the researchers who did the research on the glutamate a few years ago. It was a big research, and I had a good talk with him. I met him online. Um, and one of the things is that a short break, which is also important, does not much on the buildup of glutamate during the day. But a short nap or a siesta or a power nap does clean up the brain. So that's why it's such a great strategy to have, especially if you have to do a lot of things in the afternoon. If you have to be sharp, it's only one of the only ways to really clean up the brain so you're freshen up again. So you can take a long break or walk in the park, but it's still not as effective as really taking a nap and letting your brain clean up some of the residue, which is lingering inside your brain. And that's why it's so great.
And that brings me to sometimes, sorry, it's Dr. Gloria Marcus coming back to me again because i- sometimes when we're working, right, and our working style is we'll jump on to we'll hear a bing and we go into Teams, right? Or we might respond to, our email, a notification comes up or something like that, or a bing and a WhatsApp on my phone. So these interruptions happen. And I like the diagrams I was talking about before. You were making a comparison with deep sea diving. That is there something like where once we're interrupted, it's 23 minutes that it takes us to go into that deep
Yeah. Well, that's the Gloria
focus?
Mark
Yeah. Yeah.
research. Yeah.
Yeah. So what can we learn then from that kind of deep sea diving approach then?
Well, the big idea behind it is that we kind of have a feeling
Mm,
that how difficult it is to be really into deep focus. So if you really want
yeah.
to dive deep, we know we really need the time and space to do so, because there's nothing more painful than being very focused and then being brought out by a distraction. Just this waste of energy and pain. It can really feel horrible. Um, and especially after that, you're being distracted, it's very difficult to come back again to this very deep focus. So that's why we almost all have the same strategy, that if we have a sense that we're going to be distracted, we're not going to go that deep. We will do other things like email or short tasks, just not to go that deep with the brain. And I think that's a big problem in nowadays in society, and especially in the work environment, is that we kind of accepted it, and everybody just do shallow work somehow,
Yeah.
and we just there's just no room for deep work, so we just don't do it anymore. Maybe AI is taking over the deep work while we do the shallow work, but it's just such I think a waste of our, like, being a human and being able to think very deeply on a subject and having great thoughts about it. And I think that's such a waste that we don't dive deep anymore because we already scared that we're going to be distracted. I think that's just such a waste. Yeah.
This is a fascinating fact that you've put into the book. So if I'm dispensing medicine in a hospital in the Netherlands, the people there would be wearing a high vis to make sure nobody distracts them during. I think that's brilliant.
Well, they did a lot of research. I must say that they're still doing the research. They also did it in the UK with mixed results. So they don't. It's very difficult still to bring down the numbers of the mistakes that are made because of a distraction. It's still the. I don't want to say it now that hard because the research is still being done, but it seems like even a vest is not good enough to block the distractions, because people get used to it and then they still distract you. They look over the vest, and it's the same with these little lights on the tables, right?
Yeah.
We've also done a lot of experience with them and with companies, and then people just put on the red light the whole day. Then
Yeah.
yeah, and then after a while, somebody comes in and asks you the question like, "Hey, do you have a minute?" Because you've been having the light red the whole day, so
Yeah.
maybe it can
Yeah.
still distract you now. So
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
yeah, it's just the red light that everybody ignores. So it's very hard. Like the solution of these distractions, it's very hard, even in hospitals and on the work floor. It's very tough. Otherwise, we wouldn't have this conversation probably if it
Yeah.
was easy to fix. But yeah, it was big research, and so it's big research in hospitals in the Netherlands also. It's an older one, I think 2017, that they've shown like half of all the errors that they make was due to a direct distraction.
And you give a lot of tips in the book that I would often give out, schedule yourself for a meeting or, and something there, like even on Teams, making sure that you're busy. But that's the thing is people then put it on for the whole day so people ignore it. So that red light that you're talking about is just like a physical version.
Yeah.
Don't come near me here or
Yeah.
whatever. And even like I often say to people, if you've got headphones on, you know, a make sure people know that if you've got your headphones on, that's deep focus there.
Exactly.
Don't have the headphones on all day because then you're never available and then they're just going to ignore it. So there is something about, others then have to learn the way you work. And so there has to be something contracted amongst people, isn't it, to educate people. And I think that's the thing that's missing sometimes is people tend to bypass a system because they just want to get it done now versus,
Yeah.
oh, hold on here, isn't there? There's that sense of urgency that has to be done.
Yeah. There's a lot to be said about like having how to work together on focus, to have a team rhythm, to have this routine together to really work in the same like rhythm and to protect these stints of focus and undivided attention as a team, which is a whole different challenge to fix.
Yeah.
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 So you might be able to see it in front of me, but my desk in front of me here is very neat. And it's funny, like every time I was reading this book, I was kind of going, oh, that's why I do it. So before a podcast, I will actually clean all before me. So there's no distractions there. So I clean all the screens, all that. Even in front of me, all that's in front of me here is obviously your great book. And there, and actually, by having a clean desk means you'll be 12% better when it comes to your concentration. I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, yeah, me too. Because the thing is that your brain a couple of times per second kind of also automatically scans your surroundings. So that's why it can be so distracting to have stuff around, especially your phone. That's a very fun study that they did with students. Is that they had three groups of students. They had to make their exams, and in one group they were allowed to bring their phone to the exam and put it on silence and put it in front of them. Then one group had their phones inside a different room, and one group in the middle they had the phone on silence in the pants. And then the study shown that it really showed how that the results were different. So people who had the phone the farthest away, they scored the best. The ones who had it in their pants scored a little bit better, but the worst scores were the people who had the phone on silence in front of them. And that's fascinating how your surroundings can influence your focus. But I do have to say, there are some studies that say that you become less creative.
If this conversation has you thinking about getting better at conflict in your team, now is a good time to act on it. Resolution intelligence helps leaders bend the arc of conflict toward healthy resolution, navigating challenges with confidence and saving time, money, and relationships. Visit resolution-intelligence.com to get your personal resolution intelligence report and take the first step.
Okay, tell me more.
That a messy desk makes you more creative. But so I have to get up for them too. Like I really have to.
So I got to admit to something here.
Yeah.
I have two workstations, right?
Yeah.
So I have a focus workstation
Yeah.
and I have a messy one behind me here, which is a
You
stand-up
you
table.
fixed the system. You
I have
cracked the
fixed the
code.
system. I have cracked the code, but so in fairness, I do have to I do have to clean up some of the books and stuff like that around it to create space. And it's funny. One space is it's like two different people are working in the same office there, and it's funny. I do that, and I saw that I think on Adam Grant where he talks about messy desk and stuff like that. He was making the argument for it, and I do think it goes down to the type of task that you're doing as well. You work in environments and that reminds me then of a podcast I did with Annie Murphy Paul, and her book is fascinating. And you've touched onto some of the aspects of that. It's called the extended brain or the extended mind, and it's how our brain works in different environments. Then, and we actually can hack the brain then to make sure we'll say for a particular type of task. It's a it's a more sterile environment, you want to call it that, and then for a creative environment, you step into that, and you actually touch upon this in your book then because you were talking about how people like to work together, and you were talking about like there's a focus workstations, there's a cooperative section in the workplace, and then there's a social corner. And I love that where it's kind of that um the architecture is focused on the type of task or the type of ways of working that we need to have. And even if you go into a workspace, then if you need that quiet space, then there's a dedicated area for you. And I think this is fascinating then. So does that type of stuff really work where you kind of as you move through different workstations then that your your way of focus, your productivity levels then will benefit from that.
Yeah, I think it's working out for a lot of companies. You see it now more and more. Every company that kind of changes their building, we've seen it a lot. We do a lot of consulting, so they, they also invite us, and I've seen it working. So people have this beautiful different rooms where they can socialize, where they can work together. They have areas where there's like focus rooms where they're not allowed to talk, and everybody's very focused. And I think it works perfectly because that's also more close to how we work. It's more you change your environment by, well, the same like you do. Like you have your messy desk and you have your focus desk. And I think that really works. It's the same example with Steve Jobs, right? He has this famous pictures that he's on the floor in his house with no stuff around him. But if you see his pictures of his desk, it's like a bomb exploded. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think this dual system of having places where you can be creative and talk and working faster, and have these areas where you can focus more. And I think we also have to have this idea on how we work together, right? So it's not only the physical part, but because of MS Teams and the speed that we work on, we kind of say everything that we think. We go back and forth all the time. It kind of destroys the moments where you are allowed to think longer and um, like put it in draft for yourself and having the time to think and write and maybe communicate less often but better would also be a strategy, or have that both, that you have periods where you communicate very fast and have moments where you communicate less. I think the rhythm part is overlooked still.
Yeah, and if people are interested in that topic, I have a podcast coming after this, but with Rebecca Hines. This is your best meeting ever, and we talk about
Cool.
meetings and collaborations there. I want to return to what you were saying something earlier on about that creativity, and that reminded of the frontal polar cortex. There when it comes to creativity, there. So just tell us a little bit about that, that sometimes creativity can't always be measured in hours. Sometimes it's just something that's just there in the subconscious there. Can you
Mhm.
talk a little bit to that?
Yeah, of course. So we kind of think that um, we are productive while we're sitting behind a computer writing and doing stuff and working things out. But a lot of information like is like brought into our brains, and it's very difficult then for our brains to make connections. We're not that good at making connections while we're thinking, right? So it's the same that you forget somebody's name. And you're thinking, oh, what's the name? What's the name? What's the name? And only when you walk outside, you stop thinking about it. Then the name comes in. Oh, yeah, of course, it was this person. So that's how the brain works, and it's the same as the system that we talked about. It's the default neural network that kicks in. So your brain really needs time to unravel all the information that it got and take the time to put it from your short-term memory to your long-term memory, to connect things. Your brain will have the time to, oh, right, that one bit of information is kind of linked to the other one information, and it will create a physical connection inside your brain to link these two up. And that's how the brain is structured, and it's very fluid, but it needs time to kind of make these changes. And if we don't give it the time, we just keep on thinking productively, and we keep on pushing and keep on pushing, the name will not pop up, right? So you really have to let go and let the subconscious brain do its magic. And that's sometimes where what's so hard, because it feels lazy or it feels unproductive, and it's not this you have to keep on pushing idea, right? Because where you're thinking, you're walking in the park or laying on the couch. How can that be
Yeah.
productive? Well, it can be very productive.
Yeah.
It's a big secret.
Yeah. And I'll give you a little bit of secret there that might help our listeners then. So we're talking here about defocusing, that element in the book. And what I tend to do is I just say it's a bit like, one of the points I was making earlier on. And I sometimes lose track of my thought or my focus. And I just say to myself, it'll come back to me. And nearly instantaneously, because of defocus, then I would say in 5 seconds or something like that, it usually comes back up. Isn't that the
Beautiful.
principle then? Is just let it
Exactly.
go.
Exactly. Because it's a different system kicks in.
Yeah. And and is that the difference between open attention and target attention? Like what is open attention and target attention, and why we need to tap into the two types of attention?
We can go back to the cocktail party effect,
Yeah.
right? So
Okay.
you're in the cocktail party. Targeted attention is listening, focusing on a story at hand. Somebody's talking in front of you, and open attention is listening to the murmur, to all the sounds around you. And the same goes for um, writing behind your computer on a certain topic and looking stuff up. That's targeted attention. But you can also close your computer, uh, walk in the park, do some other things. Don't think about that subject, and your subconscious brain will keep on thinking about it and trying to make sense of it and cleaning it up, as it were. And that will, once you start thinking again, sometimes your subconscious mind will distract you with a great idea, like, oh, that's the name. Then, well, your internal stimuli is distracting you, but in a very good way. But sometimes if you go back to your computer with a refreshed brain and it had a few hours to subconsciously think about that subject of open attention, your targeted attention will be 10 times more productive. And that's I think we need both to be very productive. What was it Pablo Picasso said? I think it was Pablo Picasso. Um, there's a lot of inspiration, but it will have to find me working.
So just on that then, right? Is that what he meant about that creativity paradox then, that we have to drop the productivity a little bit to allow that creativity to emerge? And I'll give it an example here is I'm really looking to get a solution, right? So sometimes I will get a someone that I'm helping with a client, and I will often feel stuck because it might be a bit complex or whatever. And this is true. I used to play golf, and the reason I used to go is because when I relax then and I focus on something else, the answers would appear. And then my whole two, you know, I realize I actually walk off the golf course, the job done. I have the solution, and now what I've just done is I've gone for a walk in the nature. It's the exact same thing. And 15 minutes in is like, oh, brilliant! I have it now. I can enjoy the rest of the walk. And I'll actually, if people see me, I actually have a notebook beside me, jotting in down those notes, and that flow will happen. And I think that's the thing. The message I want to get across to people is that if you're really trying to be creative, then don't force it. It's finding your own way to do it. So for me, it was a waste of money going to the golf course for 2 holes, um, versus going to the woods, which I really enjoy, getting exercise and just allowing that flow to happen without any pressure.
Yeah, beautiful. And I think what you added is that it's also important to have the capture tool, the pen and paper. Otherwise, you would still keep it inside your brain. So if you
Yeah.
keep holding it, it kind of defeats the purpose. So you need, yeah. So one important thing is to have a capture tool, but it can also be your phone or something else. Or I love a pen and a piece of paper, but yeah, you kind of have to capture the great idea um, to save it. Otherwise, you just keep on. Your brain will be too full.
Yeah. And what I do as well, I've a very old school Olympus dictaphone, which is digital. And I just capture that there, and sometimes I do that. So I used to use that a lot, those little voice notes to myself, because sometimes my brain is faster than my handwriting can allow, and the flow is just like coming at such a pace. There sometimes it's too much. Um, just one thing, like so we mentioned this there at the top of the podcast, how managers might be getting in the way of their direct reports. So if I'm a manager listening in here, how might I be impacting on my direct reports?
Well, as a manager, you have a great role, and that's also to protect people's focus. And then you are in a position to really steer it. So if you know these four concentration leaks,
Yeah.
it's way easier to kind of steer. But you can also um, know why people are distracted. So you know if somebody's having some tough conversations or things are not going well at home, you know, okay, this person has a lot more internal stimuli. You can kind of compensate it with more motivation and more energy and less external distractions. So I think managers have a very important role of being the manager of people's focus. And what I see too often is that we just that the managers just put on that like they would just put more gas in the car, right, to go faster and just push people instead of being smarter and knowing when somebody needs to refuel on their energy, when they should be left alone. What is the best time to distract somebody with a question, right? To be more strategic and thoughtful about when to distract somebody with something, because you also have to protect their deep work and their momentum and their flow, right? So I think that's um, like thinking about the strategic timing of focus and knowing when to distract people and how to help them and when to motivate them to go harder, when to cool them down. I think that's a very important one.
Yeah, and also about scheduling that time in. So you pick up the phone and gonna go, I want to speak right now.
Yeah,
You might be really impacting on their productivity. They've lost, and you keep doing that several times a week. And we talked about that 23 minutes lost
yeah.
all the time. You're probably, as a result, causing them to lose maybe 6 hours a week if you have a bad habit of doing that in the morning and the afternoon.
Exactly, and a lot of people take other jobs because of they get annoyed by their manager. I agree, because can you imagine being a manager that thinks that has to keep on asking questions to the whole team? You've just destroyed the focus of 10 people. It's a very important job to be mindful of the level of focus of the team and protecting it. And you have to also be mindful that you have a big part um, in well, destroying the focus, if you will.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's such a great point, isn't it? Because we're knowledge workers now, and we have to protect that focus for ourselves and for our team. And I think this is something that needs to be designed for, isn't it? Not just
Mm.
a workspace, but how do you create that space for people to focus? And I think
Exactly.
this is why this book is so good. Um, and if it's okay, just to do the maybe one more, right? Just on digital detox there
Yeah.
and the stopping cues. So this is what I like about the book. Then it gives you the language then as well. So those stopping cues then, is that a bit like the memory or the hook to come out of TikTok? You know, Dr. Gloria Mark was talking about that with me, is that, say, listen, if you're going to do TikTok, set a timer for yourself for 5 minutes, and then you
Yeah.
hook to come out. Is that like a stopping cue there to interrupt, like a pattern interrupt to that habit?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly the same system. So you want to, well, be mindful of this. A lot of people struggle with these, like digital tools, that they are on them too often. Um,
Yeah.
it, Addiction, like maybe more like in a way that we're addicted to coffee,
Yeah.
more than very hard substances, but it's something that we struggle with, and that we want to do less. And I think there are great different strategies to do it less, right? That's
Yeah.
the big idea, to be less on our phones, to do less TikTok, Instagram, whatever. And these stopping cues can really help, like, okay, making setting a timer, or and nowadays it's built in to a lot of phones. I don't think that's a lot in the book yet, because there was done recently that, like, if you have an iPhone or you have an Android phone, you can they have great tools nowadays, like wellness, where you can set timers or limits to certain apps, and those work very well. We also we're getting more help in getting rid of these distractions around us, and I think it's important that we have a better relationship with our digital tools than
Yeah.
we might have now. And it's always difficult if there's something new. Kind of have to figure out to give it a place. First, it's very new and shiny. We want to spend the time on Instagram the whole day, and now we're
Yeah.
okay, more mindful, and maybe not the whole day.
Yeah.
Let's take a break now and then.
And just on that, you said the shiny then. So that magpie behavior, right? If it's something shiny and new, like, I often get this from people where I'm trying to help them, and they'll go, but I'm so distracted by that new project, the shiny and new thing. Like, how do I stay and complete a project then or a task? Especially if I'm constantly going, oh, I would like to do that instead.
Yeah, it's a very difficult one because it touches uh, the engagement part very strongly, right? So as I started, if you think something is very fun,
Yeah,
you will be very focused on that project, right?
yeah,
Like if you love to, I like playing basketball. If I'm playing basketball, I will be very focused. It's very hard to distract me because
yeah,
I just love doing it. A Zoom call with the team on Monday morning, where you're not really relevant to those projects. Well, it's a bit harder to be focused on that topic. And like you said, there's this very big challenge where you start a project which is very shiny, you're very excited, and then it becomes more difficult and less exciting, but it's still very important. And then the focus kind of drips off, and then you have to rely on other strategies that compensate the lack of genuine excitement for that project. And that's way more difficult. And then, like the cocktail party, one of the strategies is getting rid of shiny things around you. So then you get into the area of then putting your phone away because, yeah, your phone is more fun than this
yeah,
project that I still have to finish that I didn't finish yet, and I have to finish it, and I actually want to start this new project, and that's why you have to clear your brain so you don't start thinking about the new fun project, but you written down all the ideas of the fun project, put it aside, still have to do the boring project, right?
yeah,
So all the other strategies are become more important just to compensate the lack of genuine enthusiasm for something. It's harder to focus. It's a bigger challenge.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where the Pomodoro technique is, that 25-minute bursts really help, just to do 25 minutes and then,
Yeah.
if you another 12 minutes, and before you know it's done. And that really helped me when I was younger, struggling to get tasks done then. And then it's a choice then you're making, because if I don't do this, what's the pain I'm welcoming in? So I'll give you an example of the shiny thing and how addictive it can be. I remember when I started out in my business and Angry Birds came on the scene, and I actually had to take Angry Birds off my phone because I was like, this is getting all my attention. Like, I'm never going to be successful. Nobody's ever going to say, "Oh, what's your Angry Bird score in your career book," or anything like that. And I had to take that off completely to be more disciplined there. And obviously, there's a bit of a detox there that happened, but I think that's people need to do that detox, don't they, of their technology. Say, listen, what's working and what's not working, and how can I find a bit more of that discipline here? And I think that's what's really good about this book. It gives you the language, it gives you the awareness, it gives you the tools, the strategies, the tips, and all that. So you find to say, listen, what's the biggest leak of my concentration at the moment? Fix that, get a system in place, then move to the next leak. That's essentially what I've taken from this book is try
Thank you.
don't do everything at once. It's
No.
focus on it's like that leak. If a plumber in a house, just focus on the big thing first.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of the things that we do also when we do our training courses and in our websites is just figuring out which leaks are the most important for you, and then going by one, because otherwise it's just too overwhelming, and it's very difficult to fix them all at once. But also, I mean, like understanding how the brain works in these leagues, and probably after listening to the podcast, you've already learned so much about it, and a lot of things will happen more naturally because you're aware of how it works, and you think, oh yeah, I'm distracted because of my own thoughts, and oh, I know how to solve it. I can just write it down, and that really helps a lot. Yeah, but I love that you added that one by one is also our advice. Yeah.
So we're just talking about your book here, and you just mentioned your workshops. If people were to find out more about you and what you do, how might they do so, Oscar?
Oh, thank you for allowing me to mention it. Yeah. So we're focusacademy.com. We give training courses on this topic. We've been doing that for 10 years now. It's a lot of fun, and we teach people in companies how to focus more and be less distracted. And one thing is that you mentioned with concentration leaks is very fun. We built this like tiny free introduction course where you in like 15 minutes, and you can kind of figure out which concentration leaks are the most relevant for you. So that's a great way to start. So it's on focusacademy.com.
Yeah. Oscar, thank you so much for your time today. That was really insightful for our guests. Our
Thank you
listeners,
so
should
much.
say.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been my pleasure. Very fun. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks for coming out to the Workplace Podcast, Oscar.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Workplace Podcast in association with Dynamic Partners. We really appreciate you being part of the conversation. Want to start the conversation about leadership in your organization? At Dynamic Partners, we help leaders and teams build a culture of performance that drives real results. Visit dynamicpartners.ie to find out more about our workshops and coaching services, or email info@dynamicpartners.ie to start the conversation. We're ambitious for your leadership. Are you?